and we hit it off immediately. We were basically inseparable after that. Susan was a wild girl who liked guns, and even if we didn't see eye to eye on everything, I still loved her with all my heart. We dated for a while after graduating before I popped the question, and she made me the happiest man by saying yes. We then got married in a beautiful ceremony, and we settled down. It wasn't long after that before we were blessed with a beautiful baby girl, and a few years after the birth of our first daughter, our second daughter was born. I truly admired and cherished my little family. Susan loved her girls as they were her pride and joy, and we were really happy. But unfortunately, our happiness didn't last long, as over the years, things started to get worse. I can't remember when I first noticed it, but I slowly watched the woman I loved turn into someone else. Susan's entire character had now changed, as she became overly anxious and paranoid. At first, I thought she was going through a phase that would soon pass, but things took a turn for the worse as Susan attempted to take her life on numerous occasions. I still loved Susan with all my heart, so I did everything I could to help. I started by checking her into a private mental health facility. And it was at this facility that I was told Susan was suffering from depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues. Due to this, the therapist had to put her on numerous prescription pills to help. Things got a bit better for a while after that, as Susan started doing well, and we were finding our footing as a couple again. But tragedy struck as Susan's grandfather died. Susan loved that man with all her heart. He was also the reason for her love of firearms, as she'd inherited a .38 caliber handgun from him. She really struggled with the news, as her grandfather's loss hurt her deeply. To make matters even worse, she also lost her mother just 2 months after that. All of this was too much for Susan to handle, as she fell into a downward spiral. All the progress she'd made instantly went down the drain, and she was now worse than before. I knew she was going through a lot, so I tried my best to support her and help get her through it, but no matter what I did, nothing worked, as Susan just kept getting worse with each passing day. All this took a huge toll on our relationship, as expected, but even with everything she was going through, Susan's relationship with our daughters remained perfect. She talked about them all the time, and she was so proud of them. I also loved our daughters and the women they'd grown to become. Our eldest daughter was 22 now. She'd just graduated and started working. She was also seeing a long-term boyfriend who I liked, and it seemed like they were going to tie the knot soon. My youngest daughter was also doing well. She was 17 and in high school. I loved my girls so much that I was willing to try my best to make things work with Susan. I doubled my efforts and tried all I could to recreate the spark that would revitalize our dying relationship. But it felt like I was pouring water on a hard rock. It was so hard for me to admit, but I now knew that after more than 20 years of being together, our marriage was over. I waited until my upcoming 45th birthday to tell Susan that I didn't want to be in our marriage anymore. I figured it'd be the best time to tell her, as we'd all be there as a family. The celebration didn't start off well, as Susan and my eldest daughter got into an altercation earlier that day. She was opposed to our daughter marrying her long-term boyfriend, and Susan threatened to lock her up in order to stop the marriage. I told Susan that I supported the marriage, and our eldest daughter and I wasn't going to allow her to stop it. All this just made Susan furious, as she had an attitude for the rest of the day.
Welcome to Lighthouse Dental, creating beautiful, healthy smiles 7 days a week. Our goal is to make dental care as comfortable and convenient as possible. Here are just a few of the reasons why so many people chosen Lighthouse Dental for their families.
After the argument we'd all just had, I thought telling Susan about my plans for divorce would have been a bad idea. But I decided to get it over with, so I called her somewhere private and I told her I wanted to leave. After I broke the news to Susan, her eyes turned crazy as she looked at me and said,
"You don't want to do this, Mark. I'm telling you that you do not want to do this."
I then responded with, "But I've tried all I could, Susan. You know that I've tried, but you just don't care anymore. Our marriage is dying and I'm tired of doing everything I can to save it when neither of us wants this anymore." Susan then looked at me dead in the eyes and said,
"I'm going to make your life a living hell if you even think about living with me, Mark. I swear that I'll make you suffer, and you'll feel a pain that you've never felt before."
I had never seen Susan like that before, so her words shocked me. But I wasn't going to be bullied into staying, so I said, "There's nothing you can do about it, Susan. I've made up my mind about this, and I hope you can be mature enough to do the same. We aren't happy, so why would you suffer anymore? Come talk to me when you've calmed down." And with that, I left the room. A few minutes after that, Susan called a family meeting in the living room. I told myself that she probably thought about our recent conversation, and she was ready to tell the family about our separation. But after we'd all been seated, my heart dropped to my stomach as Susan was now holding her grandfather's gun and pointing it directly at her own family. My girls started screaming as I begged Susan to drop the weapon, but she didn't listen as she cocked the loaded gun. I instinctively put myself in front of my daughters because I assumed I was the one she wanted to shoot. But Susan wasn't aiming for me as she brutally shot our youngest daughter in the neck. I screamed as I rushed towards her, and Susan took the opportunity to shoot our eldest daughter in the back. Horrified, I immediately took out my phone and dialed 911. As the call went through, I put some distance between Susan and my bleeding daughters, and we managed to run and scramble out of the house. My youngest was bleeding profusely, so she didn't get that far before she collapsed. I could see the fear and terror in her eyes during her last moments as she wondered why her own mother shot her in cold blood. My eldest was still able to run into the street, but Susan didn't let her escape as she shot her twice in the back of the head. Susan tried to shoot her again as my daughter was still moving, but she was out of bullets. She went inside to reload, and she came back to shoot her eldest child again in the head. I watched in horror as my two daughters now lay motionless on the street, and their own mother loomed over them with a gun. At that moment, I didn't care about anything anymore, as I just wanted Susan to shoot me so I could be with my girls. But she didn't. Instead, she looked at me with a devilish grin as she knew she had made me suffer the worst thing any parent could experience. Even though she was standing in front of me, I didn't see my wife anymore. All I saw was a heartless demon. Rage soon filled me, and I wanted to kill her with my bare hands. But before I could do anything, the police arrived. They ordered Susan to drop her weapon, but she didn't listen. And after an extra warning, she was shot dead by the officers as her body fell to the floor. I didn't feel relief, because all I felt at that moment was pure anger. She'd gotten the easy way out after all she'd done, and I wanted her to pay for the atrocities she had committed. It left a bad taste in my mouth because, as much as I hated to admit it, Susan won in the end, as she made sure I saw hell on earth by putting me in eternal suffering as I completely grieved the loss of my daughters. It's been about 7 years since this gruesome night, but every single day, I find myself going back to that night when I let my daughters die at the hands of their own mother. There's no day that I don't blame myself, as I always wish I could have given my girls a better mother. She took everything away from me, and she made sure what she did would destroy me. I can still see her grinning face every time I close my eyes as she laughs and enjoys her victory. There's no moving past this, as no amount of therapy can fix me, and I know that I'll suffer this torment for the rest of my days. The story you just heard was loosely based on the real-life case of Christy Bird Sheets. On the 24th of June, 2016, at around 5 p.m., Christy Sheets brutally shot her daughters, Taylor and Madison Sheets, with a .38 caliber handgun on the street outside their home in Houston, Texas. After the authorities were called, the Fort Bend County sheriffs shot and killed Christy soon after they arrived at the murder scene, as Christy refused to drop her gun. Her eldest daughter, Taylor, died on the street in front of their home. And her sister, Madison, was quickly flown to the Texas Medical Center, where she unfortunately couldn't be saved. These gruesome murders happened on Christy's husband, Jason Sheets' 45th birthday. She pulled the gun right in front of him and their children, and Jason begged Christy, saying, "Don't do this. They're our kids." But his pleas fell on deaf ears, as he was unable to stop the atrocities that happened that night. Jason and his daughters can be heard begging Christy on the 911 call that was made on that fateful night. Mr. Sheets lost his mind after the incident, and he was quickly taken to a nearby hospital as he was suffering from severe emotional distress. A few days after the incident, Jason Sheets was interviewed by the Fort Bend County Sheriff's Office, and he told investigators that his wife had several opportunities to shoot him as well, but he believes she wanted him to live and make him suffer by killing their daughters. Fort Bend County Sheriff Troy E. Nils gave a closing statement on the case, saying, "We look at him as a victim. This is something he is going to have to live with for the rest of his life. She accomplished what she set out to do, which is to make him suffer." As for Jason Sheets, he's currently trying his best to move on from the horrific acts carried out by the woman he once called his wife.
Hey, did you forget it's Mother's Day in a couple weeks?
really
Yeah, you probably did. All right, pay attention. This is no-use Firefly glass, and in case you've been living under a rock, here's everything you need to know about this insanely cool gift in less than 30 seconds. And if you totally want to wow your mum with a gift that's as cool as she is, this is it. The bracelets are designed by No-Use Studio in Toronto, and are probably the most unique jewelry I've ever seen. They're made of real lamp